Hi, and welcome to OCD Game Changers, a men's mental health series for the month of November. I am Chrissy Hodges, Executive Director of OCD Game Changers, and today we are excited to be able to interview Mr. Tom Smalley, and we're going to be talking about wellness and health as it pertains to mental health. But first, I'm going to have John introduce himself if you don't know him already.
Yeah, I'm John. Um, I was thinking to myself today when I first logged on, I'm wearing my Dallas Cowboys shirt because last night we beat
Big
the
W.
Eagles, and I live in New Jersey, so obviously I'm just doing this to just piss people off. Um, but I'm pretty sure I wore Dallas gear at Brian's interview too, so I do own other clothes other than Dallas Cowboys.
Everybody send John a shirt
Yeah,
as
yeah,
soon as
yeah. If
possible.
anybody wants to send me a shirt, yeah,
Yeah.
feel free. But yeah, so that's me. Tom, do you want to kind of give an introduction of yourself and then like what you do? And
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Tom Smalley. I've known Chrissy for quite some time. Me and John, we met this past summer,
yeah, yeah.
first time, but I'm a certified mental performance consultant through the Association of Applied Sports Psychology. I'm also an IOCDF advocate and been in the OCD advocacy space and for about a decade now. From lived experience, I was diagnosed when I was 16, and my life was flipped upside down by OCD, as many people are, and that started my advocacy journey. I went through a situation in college, which obviously gave me some notoriety and popularity in the OCD community, and just kind of expand my platform when I was abused by college coaches for my OCD, and it became a national headline. So while that situation was awful and in its own right, it also gave me the opportunity to help a lot of other people heal and share my purpose and my story. So there's a lot to be grateful for as well. But I'm based in Austin, Texas now, and from the Northeast originally. Um, the Patriots have now won 9 straight games, if anybody's counting. So
Yeah.
yeah, so things are good. Can't complain. I actually dislocated my finger last week, so that's kind of a downer in the week in jiu-jitsu. So yeah, it was a kind of a freak thing. And but yeah, other than that, everything has been good. I love talking mental health, especially as a male. I think we've seen an increase in people speaking out, but it's still just a few weeks ago, there was a Dallas Cowboys player that committed suicide. And I know the whole entire athletic community has been mourning that, and my condolences and prayers go out to the family and people affected. And so it just goes to show that we have so much work to do, and so that's why I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been cool to see a lot of like the athletes that are like coming up now, kind of just more open about mental health.
Totally.
Like Dak on the Cowboys,
Yeah,
I mean, he has his whole foundation that's meant for
yeah. Is
mental health.
did his brother commit suicide?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, so kind of he has an interesting story. It's definitely
Yeah.
something I'll look into. But I guess we'll dive into the topic. I guess let's talk more. Um, we'll start with like just kind of your activity. I know you're uh pretty big in the athletic community. Like, did you turn to like sports and exercise and all that kind of stuff? Because of OCD, like as an outlet, or was this just something you've been always passionate about?
I think now more of an outlet. I think yeah, I just grew up in a sports family. My uncles played football in college. I mean, just was always in sports. Like, just kind of that was what we did on weekends. My parents were willing to sacrifice their, you know, entire weekends, and you know could have been their marriage probably because they're just traveling 24/7 and don't get to spend time with each other, right? But they loved it. They loved being there for me and my brother when we played sports, and so I played football and basketball, lacrosse. But I don't think I think people think of sports as an outlet, and while it can be, I think that's a dangerous mindset too, because I think people avoid uncomfortable situations and things that actually are lying beneath the surface just by saying, "Oh, the gym is my therapy," or my "Oh, I go for runs and that really clears my mind." Like, yeah, that's great. There are physiological benefits, plenty of them. The research shows that, but like when you stop playing the sport or like your activity's done for the day, you still got the same shit that you got to face head on, right? And it's just like, so I think similar to that, it just becomes it can be a dangerous slope to use that as a cop out of like actually addressing behavioral changes that are necessary and mental health challenges that people face. So I think while exercise and wellness are so important and benefit OCD and benefit mental health, they shouldn't be they shouldn't be replacing therapy. And so I think a lot of the time when I was in sports, I did kind of replace real treatment with that outlet until my OC took a chokehold on my life. And then it was like, okay, now we really have to go get treatment because playing lacrosse or playing football or playing basketball isn't this like now OCD is getting in the way of that. And so now I have nothing, right?
Mhm.
And now I have no outlet. So I think there's kind of a caveat to that, right? Like I do jujitsu 6 times a week. I compete like, I was a competitive Olympic weightlifter for a while, but like my OCD took a hold of that, right? And so I think like while there were certain things that like motivated me and the athletic experience grounds me and gives me something to train for, I would say my habits improve and my discipline improves, and therefore my life with OCD is better.
Mhm.
But that doesn't take away from the fact that I need therapy, I need medication, I need to manage my OCD. So I think it's such a kind of tenfold question of like, yeah, we kind of need this stuff, but like sports and exercise are also good for mental health.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I've seen at least, and I don't know, Chrissy, if you've seen this, but um, sometimes when OCD or like anxiety like latches on to the health aspect of like,
Chrissy's dog
I
over
mean,
here.
I could, when it latches on to the health aspect of like, maybe wanting to like measure out calories, like addictively
Totally.
or obsessively, like going to the gym, the amount of times you go to the gym, like getting any kind of like weightlifting routine or exercise routine like perfect. And do you see that a lot in your
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure Chrissy does too. Like
Yeah.
it's like I've never, even when I was in weightlifting, like jujitsu, the I'm lucky because I don't have to like add weight or lose weight. Like I'm just kind of sit in a range and like it's nice. So like, but when I was a competitive weightlifter, like I had to cut and like kind of count my calories and like track macronutrients and like while that stuff can be beneficial, like that's a really, really slippery slope for somebody with OCD or even OCD tendencies, right? Or like generalized anxiety. Like it's a really tough place to live in that space.
yeah.
And I just don't recommend it. And like also like yeah, I competed at a pretty high level, but I wasn't going to be an Olympian. So like at what cost, right? Like at what cost was I sacrificing like being able to like go have a meal with my friends and like being terrified that I'm going to be out of my cut for that for the next 2 months, right? Like there are really slippery slopes like that where I think athletes fall into that. And if you're not being paid in millions and millions, and I don't even think that warrants it, but like if you're being paid millions to be a certain weight and compete at a certain weight, okay, one, now you have the money to find resources and the help where like you can help manage it and that anxiety that comes with it, but also like at least you're being compensated. Whereas there's a lot of athletes that compete full time that aren't making what MLB, NBA, and NFL players are making, right? And
Yeah.
now have these battles going on where they don't have the resources. So it's a really and then like I would say like just daily life people, right? When they get into an exercise routine, like or a nutrition or start a certain diet. Like I've seen it with like, you know, nine people that are working 9 to 5s, right? It's as long as they have OCD, it definitely can creep right in. I mean, like, oh, I need if I miss, a day at the gym, I need to go 5 days in a row, right? Like it's very easy to start having those thought processes, like, and start kind of getting wrapped up in that cycle with exercise.
I think too
Like
that
pushing yourself.
the
Yeah.
external validation piece too, especially for people with OCD or mental health, it's if I'm struggling internally, maybe from stigma, shame, and things like that, then it can turn external to, well, I'll become an Uber athlete, or I'll
Hmm.
have the perfect body, or I'll have the
Totally.
perfect health, or things like that. There's so many contributing factors. I'm so glad that you brought up the piece about being an athlete until OCD basically is like, no, you're not going to anymore. Because when I was in college, I started running because of OCD. I
Mhm.
remember my brain at age 15 just going wild. And I thought, I'll just, I'll exhaust my body as much as I can every day. So I started running on the track and then got into running, became a cross country collegiate athlete. And when OCD was at its worst, I went out for a run and I just couldn't do it. And that was when I knew. I was like, "Oh my God, running has always been the thing that took it away." And now whatever's going on in my brain is taking that away. And that was terrifying to me. God, I had a question with that too, and now it's gone. Oh, yes. With that said, you will often hear people say, my OCD makes me a better athlete.
Mm.
And we've had people in this community say that are athletes. And I remember being at a meeting one time, and Evelyn Stewart, who's up in Canada, was just like raising her hand. She was like, I have research to back up that's
Yeah.
not the case. And so, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. Like, when people, I'm sure you come across people that say things like that, whether they do or don't have OCD. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. When I first started anxiety in athletes with the ICDF, like that was a big thing. It was like a big change of messaging that me and Callie Werner really wanted to implement, and Evelyn Stewart. Uh, it was like, hey, this doesn't make you a better athlete. And so then, like, there were some times where we had like some bigger name athletes that hadn't received treatment yet say things like that. And then once they received treatment, they were like, oh, no, it doesn't make you a better athlete, right? So they didn't know what they didn't know. But that gets super frustrating because it's like once one big athlete says it and it's posted to millions of people,
Right.
now it's like, oh, it makes it better, right? So we worked really hard on implementing messaging that talks about the physiological effects of OCD and how exhausted, anxious, how those extra reps and extra work you're putting in that OCD drives is not actually beneficial because they're mindless and they're not driven by intention and being fully present in the moment. You could take 1,000 jumpers, on the court every day if your OCD is telling you to, but like if you're not actually practicing intentionally, then those things aren't like the neuromuscular pathways aren't actually being activated, right? So it's not like physiologically, it shows that you're not getting any better just because you're putting extra work in, right? Is that work intentional, right? So that's always when I work with clients that come to me with that, I usually say, okay, like how many hours of the week are you putting in, and how many of those hours do you feel like you're present and you're intentional with what you're doing? And usually the response is about 50%, right? And that's because the extra 50% that they're doing is either perfectionism driven, OCD related, right? And so then that's when they realize like, oh, if I just did an extra 10% that was actually intentional, like I'm all for extra work, but at at the cost of making sure that your recovery is also good too, because nothing happens with it without proper recovery, right? And like I think that also when you can bring the recovery act portion of training and frame it as part of the training plan instead of like an addition, right? Or like an extra part of the training plan, right? So like I'll have a lot of athletes that'll come to me and be like, I feel guilty for taking a rest day.
Mm,
And that's because they were conditioned in high school or college by certain coaches that rest days are weak. But reality, like adaptation mentally and physically comes and develops with rest and recovery, right? Recovery drives adaptation. So we want to look at recovery and rest days as part of the whole training plan.
absolutely.
And once you can start doing that, I think people start seeing the bigger picture of like, oh, this is actually, I need to do nothing today because this is actually helping me. And so it's just trying to reframe it like, hey, doing more is not always better.
Right.
Most of the time, it's not.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I don't deal with this in like the like sports or like activity level stuff, but in school at least, and I know Chrissy, you might come up, is like I found myself when I was making like outlines for law school, like spending so many hours just trying to perfect these outlines, like fear of like missing something or
Dude,
leaving something out.
yes, a thousand
And
percent.
there was a point where like I don't think I realized it until graduation, which was like a couple months ago. And like studying for the bar now is that there's so much information. Like I need to figure out how much of my time I'm actually actively studying versus
A
like
hundred percent.
writing out stuff.
100%. I do the
Uh,
same thing. When I was in grad school, I realized I spent like 2 months getting these outlines done of these notes for my licensure exam. And I'm like, all this time I was doing these outlines, I could have just been fucking studying
yeah,
all of
yeah.
these things that I've been just writing like robotically, not even thinking about them.
Mhm.
And it's true. Like you get so stuck on the aspect of like being organized
Yep.
that you don't actually intentionally do things.
Yep.
And yeah, I fall into that trap all the time. Like I fall into that trap like even when I was like when I take notes after jujitsu. Like I'm like, okay, I need to reflect 3 things that I learned today. Just write down 3 things that I learned today. And
Mhm.
that's it. Like I'm not, you know, writing 7 pages again because it just becomes too much.
Yeah. Yeah. I finally like learned how to cut down on things, and it's like been a lot less stress on my mind, which has been nice.
Yeah.
With
But
like,
I always had the intrusive thought of I'm going to miss information and
yeah,
then it's going to come up on an exam.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, kind of on that same idea. One of the videos you did was about motivation and like teachers being aware of like students who
Mm.
maybe are
Yeah.
just going through OCD and just trying to survive in this like go mode. Um, and school could be, 10 times harder for that student. And, that applies to athletes or anybody that's, working out or trying to get physically fit. Like,
Totally.
so I guess like what advice or like what's something that you keep in mind when you're maybe not feeling 100% and you lack the motivation, but you want to stay on track. Like how do you navigate that and
I have
everything?
2 rules is don't miss 2 days in a row. So this, the psychology of habit. One day is not a big deal, but the minute you start missing double days in a row
Yeah.
is when that habit starts to break. So don't miss 2 days in a row. And and that isn't meant to be rigid, right? It doesn't mean you have to do something super rigid on that second day. So the second thing would be adaptable. So when I was competing in Olympic weightlifting, it was I need to get my double session day done. I would have 8 sessions a week maybe, and like so I had a couple double days, and like it was so rigid that like I would be dragging ass to the gym because I'm like I have to get this done. I have to do it. So I didn't have the mental flexibility or adaptability to like be like, okay, today I'm just going to go for a walk and I need this rest, right? And that's what really corners athletes and traps them is that they don't they don't have the flexibility in their schedule or adaptability, but that adaptability is really important. So like, well, my non-negotiable is like, hey, don't miss 2 days in a row. It doesn't mean that non-negotiable is, hey, make sure you're working out extra hard the second day because you missed the first day, right? It's just pick up where you left off, right? And so there's a bit of grace in there instead of like, hey, don't miss 2 days in a row, you're soft, right? Like
Yeah.
it's, hey, just get back on track the next day, right? So don't miss 2 days in a row. And then I think aligning what you're doing with your values is really important. So like ACT is a big core part of treatment for me and for my philosophy with athletes is you know values driven action. So aligning what you're doing with your values is going to provide better action than if you're just, oh, well, discipline is important and I just need to do this, right? You're not going to do it intentionally if it's not values driven. Um, so I think those two things would be uh, the core components of finding yourself in those situations. But I think, I did another video recently of people want motivation every day, but like anybody that tells you motivation, they're motivated every day they wake up out of bed is just fucking lying.
Yeah.
I
Like just
know. But
straight up.
that's the message we get from society.
100%. It's like, oh, you're not going hard enough. You're
Yeah.
not
Right.
like, all these entrepreneurs you see on Instagram, all these people you see on TikTok, they're like, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I do my cold plunge. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay,
Always
yeah,
a cold
well,
plunge.
check
Oh,
they're like, and then I inherited my trust fund from my dad. So I really didn't actually have to
yeah.
work for any of this, right? Yeah,
Uh,
it's just like so much. It's
yeah.
just enough,
Yeah.
it's just enough. Like everybody has their own journey or their own timeline, their own lane. And I'm so tired of seeing like people promoting like this toxic hard work ethic. Like it's like, bro, like you can do both,
Yeah.
right? Like you can run on a Sunday and
Mhm.
also work really hard all week, right? Like both are possible.
Well, I think
Um,
that that also perpetuates the what exactly what you were saying. If you take a, not if you don't if you're taking 2 days off, when we're programmed to think that you have to be motivated, you have to be doing things every day, even on your weekend, which I'm guilty of, but still, whatever. I'm the exception. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. It's anxiety driven. But then what happens, especially if you have OCD, is that when the second day comes along and you're not motivated, it just compounds. And that's when you're right there, you're at danger of avoidance, or just like we were talking about, which is I have to do double, even if I'm not feeling well mentally. I think exactly what you were saying
totally.
in regards to the flexibility can be applied to treatment and working toward recovery. You may miss a day of ERP, but then the next day it's like, oh my gosh, I have to do imaginary scripts that are worse, or I have to do 5 hours of ERP, and you may not be in the mental capacity to do it,
Right.
or you could just drive by a grocery store that makes you feel anxious. Like that's okay too.
Right. Exactly.
You know,
Right.
that's one little exposure that's not completely draining, your everything about who you are because you're so afraid that you've missed 1 or 2 days and now everything is gone, which I know athletes do that too. If I miss,
Totally.
you know,
Totally.
2 days, all of my strength is going to
All
be
and progress is gone. Yeah. That's another trap that people fall into is like, and it's like, if they looked at the research, like physiologically, to lose actual muscle, it takes 31 days minimum of doing absolutely nothing. like sitting on your butt, like doing absolutely nothing. It would take 31 days to completely start losing muscle mass. And then power output is the quickest one. So if power output is like an explosiveness is like five to 7 days. So like even that, right? Like, and you're not losing at all. It's just like a little bit, right? So like even that is like you could miss a week and you're still going to be okay, right? Like you're still going to be okay. And I think that's something that's just really tough to, you know, your work accumulates and people think like, and the same thing with treatment, right? Like you said, you don't have to like do what you missed on top of the next day too, right? Like it accumulates. You missed a day, all right, go to the next day, right? And I think that's kind of the trap that people fall into. But like the motivation thing is like you're not going to wake up motivated every day, and that's where habits come in. That's where discipline comes in. So I think like for athletes that are looking to improve, right, like the systems they have in place that include mental flexibility and mental adaptability are the ones that keep them on the course rather than relying on hype and motivation each day.
Yeah, but my therapist has said multiple times to me, just make contact. And I feel like that has been like sort of a game changer because it's very easy for, people who struggle with anxiety, OCD to like have this big picture result of like the end goal. And like if you're not completing it within the couple days that you start, it's very easy to fall off because,
Absolutely.
and then doubling down on yourself, like I think, Christy talks about it a lot, but like the whole punishing yourself like aspect,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, and that could stem from so much, right? Like that can stem from childhood, that can stem from like, just your environment you grew up in, what is the coaches you had maybe, right? Like there's just so many things, what you consume, and
yeah.
it's just we have a very like guilt enforced like society.
Mhm.
Like you
Yeah.
should feel bad if you don't do this. You should feel
Right.
bad if you're not doing this, right? And it's like, no, you really don't have to.
Right.
Yeah.
Zero flexibility.
Right. Very, very little flexibility.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of go back to a little bit. You were talking about your Olympic training and last, what was it, a couple years ago, Simone Biles, she kind of stepped back and took a break because she was dealing with the whole anxiety, performance anxiety in particular. And like, I guess, did that ever come up for you? I'd like to know if that ever came up for you or if like you deal with clients who suffer from performance anxiety and like kind of any tips to get through that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would say majority of my clients are I'm working with performance anxiety. And then a lot of that, I mean, for me personally, I had never experienced athletic burnout until about April this past year when my Olympic weightlifting career stopped. Um, I came down to Texas and was working with a coach that ended up just being pretty toxic. And um, at the same time, I found jujitsu and just decided to kind of switch lanes. And I mean, a lot of that was because I was so burnt out from weightlifting. I had never experienced a time where I was like, oh gosh, I have to go train. And I experienced that for the first time in March and April of 2025. And it was like just like this super disheartening feeling of like, oh gosh, like I'm dreading the thing I used to love. That sucks. So it's since gotten so much better with just like, being able to have flexibility in what I'm doing. Like I can go for a hike, I can go for a run or go to the gym and do what I want to do, and then I can go to jujitsu after. Right? It's just like having that flexibility again is really really nice, and then still having the competitive outlet of like competing in jujitsu is really refreshing too. But not having that pressure of like I have to plan my calendar around peaking for this date and uh, being qualifying for this competition, and it was just a lot. And so it gets to be a lot, and so I really empathize with and like what Simone Biles was doing was on a whole different level than where I was, right? Like, I mean, she's one of the most phenomenal athletes of all time, right? And so that pressure and that burden that she was carrying was probably just so intense. But in terms of performance anxiety, I think there's like so many different facets you have to look at.
Mm.
Is it the environment they're in? Is it stemming from work they haven't done before and now it's accumulating? Is it